Welcome to the Sky Cricket Podcast. We're coming to the end of the mini break, really, between the second and third Test matches. The next one starts in Rajkot on Thursday. England flying back into India on Monday after a week-long break with their families in Abu Dhabi. I am in Mumbai. I've been in Mumbai since the end of that second Test match in Visakhapatnam. Nas, as ever, you're tethered like a goat to Chelmsford. How have you been?
Tethered like a goat. It's rained for a week. We've had floods. I'd much rather be in the Trident Hotel. Even with you, I'd much rather be in the Trident Hotel, Mumbai. But I was cheered up last night. Arsenal beating the Hammers 6-0. How's your week been in Mumbai? What have you been up to?
Well, it's been very pleasant, I have to say. The weather is markedly different from what it was like when we were here for the World Cup. We were here in November, weren't we? When we saw England absolutely wilt in the heat against South Africa. If you remember that game at the Wankhede when they just wilted when Josh Butler decided he wanted to field first in about 55-degree heat. Well, it's much more pleasant now, post-Christmas. It's very, I wouldn't say cool, but very pleasant temperatures around about 28, 29 degrees during the day. Much less pollution than there was. If you remember when we were here at the Trident, you couldn't really see over to the far side at Malabar Hill. It was all very kind of, dusty but very clear days now. You can see right across the bay to the far side. What have I been doing? Not that much, to be honest.
I'm really pleased for you, Af.
I've been wandering around Colaba, which is lovely. I had a very nice dinner with Mr. Shastri last night. I've been to Trishna, and the curried crab there is to die for. Took a couple of the journos who are staying here to Khyber for some local fare as well. So it's been very pleasant. But looking forward now to getting to Rajkot. I fly to Rajkot Tuesday morning, and really looking forward to the Test match there. If you remember, we did the very first test, didn't we? The first Test match that was played at this ground in 2017. It was a bit of a run fest, a game that ended in a draw. And Ben Stokes was one of those who got a 100. So he'll be looking forward to reacquainting himself with this ground.
And a few milestones in Rajkot, possibly. Ravi Ashwin, 499, looking for his 500th. Jimmy, 695, looking for his 700th. Incredible. And Ben Stokes, 100 Test matches. You've got to be a good player to get to 100 Test matches, Ath.
Yeah, Nas, you do have to be a good player to play 100 Test matches for England. There's been 15 cricketers who've done it. You're not one of them. So I had to get somebody on this podcast who knows exactly what it's like to play 100 Test matches for England, along with myself. So welcome to the Duke, Ian Bell, who played 118 matches. I think your 100th, Belly, was, am I right in saying, the Sri Lanka match at Headingley, that epic game that finished with Jimmy Anderson being in tears on the podium?
It was, yeah, memorable. Probably not for great reasons on that one, as you said, but a great game of cricket. It's good to see you guys.
You were there right at the start of Ben Stokes' career. Obviously, it's his 100th Test in Rajkot coming. His first one was in Adelaide on that 2013-14 tour. So you were coming to the latter stages of your career there. And in fact, you must have been in the middle, I think, as he came out to bat for the first time. I mean, have you got any specific memories of the young Ben Stokes when he was right at the start of his England career?
Well, I think I handed him his Bunbury cap at under-15s as
well. That's right. There is a great photo of you handing him his cap. Yeah.
That's right. So I think when you have those moments and you're, I suppose I was a young England player at the time there, and you hand over a Bunbury cap, which we all know that's quite an important part of your development as a young player and the experience you get. So then to play a Test match with guys that you've done that with, is quite special as well. And then you get to share, like you said, the amazing part of, like I said, putting on a full cap and playing Test match cricket with them. So yeah, I mean, Stokesy, there's no doubt. I think we actually roomed together as well when it was famous in 2011 when we went to the Germany camp and got the team together, and then we went off and did that. This time it was in Stoke. It didn't quite work out the same. It's the whole tour didn't work out the same, and also the team gathering didn't work out the same. But my first impression rooming with him, and I don't know, Nas, I was on, I suppose, a 19-year-old when I first came on my tour with you guys, and Ben was pretty quiet at that point as a roommate, and probably saw a bit of similarity there. Obviously that's blossomed over time, and he's definitely come out and we see his personality, but quite quiet. until, like, again, when we got to Australia, and then you saw him play cricket and compete like he did, and you knew straight away, take away the talent, but the competitive side of him in training, with bat and ball, it was all going to come out. There was a fine cricketer ready to blossom for England.
Were you always pretty convinced? I mean, not just Stokes generally, but do you, having seen lots of players come into the England team during your time there, you obviously played a lot of games, 118. Do you have a clear sense when young players come in? Do you say to yourself, "Yep, he's going to be around for a long time. He's going to play 100 tests. He's not. I don't fancy him." I mean, do you get a clear sense of it right at the start?
Certainly the two that stand out to me was obviously Ruti when he first came into India again, and we saw him. And I remember him, just talking about Ruti for a second, I remember him batting against spin in some tough conditions in the nets, and actually walking down the chair like a young lad. He didn't want to stand there. He wanted to sit down while he was waiting for his turn, and had that confidence about him as well. And I think the Stokesy was exactly the same. Just again, not just the ability, but the way they carried themselves, what they gave to the team as well around the group. I think that's important as well. It's not you just come in to do your stuff, but how you engage. And senior players obviously help with that. And you want to make it an open dressing room for players to come into. But yeah, there's a way he controlled his own game, was seriously impressive. And as I said, that series was particularly tough anyway in 13, because we were on the wrong side of some tough results. And you know what it's like in Australia when it's not going your way. And Mitchell Johnson was on fire. But I mean, there's no doubt that didn't affect Ben at all. And that can affect, having gone through that, your confidence. But the way Ben batted and bowled, and the 100, as I think you guys said, I was lucky enough to be in the middle for quite a lot of that 100. That was the day I thought, wow, this lad is going to play. I mean, the way he took on the short ball, the way he hit down the ground, there were some amazing signs there that you thought, yeah, this lad is a special player. And I remember actually just in the tour, because we started the whacker with the prep, and I remember technically Gucci just lining him a little bit different to allow him to access down the ground. And as soon as he clicked that with the short ball as well, that was a seriously impressive innings. That really, I suppose, we all realise what a special talent we've got.
Belly's talking about, a bit of batting there and a bit of the technique. From a captain's perspective, when you're bringing a young player into the team, and you'll have capped a lot of players or selected a lot of new players, are you looking more for temperament and character, or are you looking, on the kind of technical side, or a combination of both?
I think we changed actually in selection. I think when I first started in selection, it was all about stats and were they getting runs and whatever. And I think what we tried to do is go towards character. The character, I always remember Darren Gough saying, when we're 20 for 2, there is no individual I want to send out the door more than Graham Thorpe at 20 for 2. You look in his eyes and he's up for the battle. And the same, I would say, for Stokes. And if you look at Stokes, actually, Stokes' stats are excellent. He averages 36 with the bat, 32 with the ball, over 100 catches, brilliant run-outs. They're excellent stats. But his value to a team is much more than those statistics. Those key moments, that competitive, those second innings where you need him to stand up and stand out, Stokes has always been there. He's never someone to back down, back away. And when you're going into battle with Australia or any other side, that's the sort of character you're looking for. And I think Stokes has that in abundance as a player and obviously as a leader. Was there anything in those early days that would make you think that he's going to be the leader that he's become, Belly? Or was that just he was too raw back then from what you saw?
Yeah, I mean, very raw. But I think a bit like we saw with Fred at times as well, a leader in the way he played his cricket. Probably the way he's really captained over the last 12, 18 months, tactically, the way he's galvanised this group, probably didn't quite see that in the early days. But as a leader in terms of his performance and give me the ball at any time, as you said with the bat, in the toughest of moments, he finds a way. There's definitely in his but the way we've seen him captain, probably not too many saw that really, but it's been brilliant to watch now. Last 12, 18 months, him as a leader and a tactician really as well. I think that's the most impressive part of it.
Do you remember the kind of row he had with Brad Haddin in that first game? He got a wicket. It was a no ball, wasn't it? And I think Brad Haddin chirped at him and said that'll be the first and last test wicket you get or something, which obviously the red mist came down, steam coming out of his ears. And I was just looking back at Ben's book, Firestarter, that he wrote subsequent to that. And Brad started to chirp at him. And I think it was Jimmy Anderson who said to Brad Haddin, I wouldn't I wouldn't
Yeah.
mess with this lad if I was you. And Matt Pryor said the same. And then Brad Haddin quietly disappeared into himself after that.
No, so that's dead true. I think a few of us said the same thing, mate. Yeah, this is not the bloke you want. Definitely not the bloke you want. He will see you afterwards. So, but look, he's it's amazing to watch, as you said, from the early days all the way through, and how he's gone about. And I think the way Nas just described him as a player and the effect he has, not just in the stats, but everything, he's made him a very special player.
The Andy Flower role, and someone you know well, Belly, Andy Flower, at one stage, Stokes has been through the ups and downs, that is for certain, on and off the cricket field. And Andy Flower's role, I think he turned to him after one meeting and said, you don't want to play cricket for England, you just want to piss it up against the wall. There's been a lot of tough love as well.
That was the Lions trip. The Lions trip only about 6 or 7 months before the England tour of Australia in 2013-14. And I think he was sent home with Matt Coles from memory. And it was Andy Flower who delivered the message, and probably a bit of tough love that was required at that moment, because he's on the cusp of becoming an England player. He's obviously got all the inbuilt character that we know came out in his cricket, and he's obviously a good enough player, but perhaps wasn't quite as professional or as, taking it all in as he might have been. And what I found interesting, Belly, and I'll come to you on this, is that kind of management style, and you were right there with Andy, and he helped make England the best team in the world for a while, but was quite tough, quite driven, quite hard management style. And even he now has mellowed, I think, in his second coming as a bit of a franchise coach. And that kind of management style is a little bit out of favor now, isn't it? As times change, we're 10 years down the line, and the McCullum management style, which is all very, lovey-dovey and make people feel good, is very different to Flower's management style from 10 years ago. But in fact, that was necessary at that point with somebody like Ben.
100%. And I think of the team, I still regard Andy as probably the best coach I ever worked with. And I think actually even the team, when Andy took over, it's exactly what we needed at that time. There was a lot of talent in that dressing room, probably needed a little bit more direction, a little bit more toughness about how we went about our business. So I think he was the right man at the right time and so successful. But you're right as well. I think as a player, especially when you're on the cusp and Lions tours and on the edge, you also need some honesty as well. It's not just about, like you said, the tough love, but it's honesty. You're not going to say that to someone who you don't think has the ability that could go on and have a career like Ben's had. So if he doesn't get that honesty at that point, who knows what happens down the line. So I think it takes courage as a coach to have that conversation, doesn't it? And it's the right time, right place. And Ben, as all of us have, we've all made mistakes through the highs and lows of playing cricket in the public eye and everything. But Ben, what he's managed to do, he's a resilient guy, isn't he? When he's been knocked down with his cricket or he's had bad days, he's managed to dust himself off and go again. So that's really important. But I would have thought those conversations with Andy were massively important in his career development.
Belly, you've gone into coaching now. Are you tough love or are you lovey-dovey? Which one are you?
I'm not sure I'm a screamer and a shouter, Nas, but look, I think it depends on where you are, doesn't it? I think one thing in the last 6 to 12 months or so of coaching of different environments, different places, whether it's a Lions tour or an under-19s tour or you're in a franchise team, there's different skill sets you have to use, don't you? But I think if you feel like you have to have that honest conversation to help a player and it might hurt, then I feel like I could deliver that. But also there's times where, again, the managing of that player or the team, it's and Athers said it's a different era we're in now in terms of it's you've got to be smart with it now. It's how you create that environment for players. And days gone by when screaming and shouting worked, I'm not sure it's quite there anymore. But I'll always try and be honest with players that I work with and support them to be the best they can be and the best team environment we can create.
It brings us neatly onto your coaching. You're obviously with the England Lions recently in Ahmedabad for their couple of test matches there. Just give us a brief overview of where you are as a coach. Who have you been working with over the last 12, 18 months up to the point of the Lions?
Yeah, and it's been a great 6 months, actually. I mean, I've managed to get international cricket experience with New Zealand, which was everything I expected, really, of their environment and the way they go about their business. It was that was special to be involved in their dressing room. I've been in franchise cricket, so I've just come back from the Big Bash as well in Melbourne, and then obviously onto the Lions tour within the 100, and obviously doing some stuff in county cricket as well. So I feel like, over the last 12 months, I've really got a good, opportunity in lots of different environments, which is only going to help me down the line with my coaching. But yeah, it's been good. And the winter again was the same, especially coaching in Australia, seeing it from their side of things. We had the likes of Aaron Finch in our side and, experienced Australian cricketers. So it puts you a little bit out of your comfort zone there and getting to know and seeing some of their best young players as well. There's a lad called Jake Fraser-McGurk coming through. So I got the opportunity to work with him. He's probably their best young player or young batsman coming through. So that was interesting. And then to come from franchise cricket into red ball cricket again in India with our, some of our best young players again. So it's been a really interesting one, but trying to get the balance between franchise cricket and also red ball cricket, which is obviously the part of the, my big love for the game as well.
So the roles so far have been as a batting coach specifically. Is that where your ambitions lie, or are you thinking about a head coach's position down the line as well?
Definitely, and some of them certainly franchise at Melbourne, assistant coach. So yeah, opportunities. So that's definitely where I want to get to as head coach. And I suppose you want to get your skill set, to a level as well that is where you want it to be and you're sought after. But also, yeah, the leading aside and as you talked about the way Brendan's done his stuff and learning from these players, that was part of the reason getting around and getting to lots of different environments, just to watching Gary in New Zealand, how he manages that group, spending time with Stephen Fleming, who was in that environment as well, and picking his brains of how, he's a head coach of Chennai for so long. So there's so many people I've tried to, look at, take stuff off, as you do as a player when you're coming through. You're trying to find out all these things, what works for you in your way, to become the best you can be. I'm not in a mad rush for it. I want to learn and become the best I can be. But it's been some great environments that I've been lucky enough to get into.
Tell us a little bit about the Lions tour then, Belly, the bench strength of both England and India. The batters on the England Lions are quite an interesting mix, weren't they? Because there are a couple of quite established players like Keaton Jennings and Alex Lees, obviously very experienced county cricketers, but also have had a fair bit of international experience. But then one or two real bolters like Rue from Somerset, Mousley from Warwickshire. Just give us an overview of what you saw there from an England perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great tour. As you said, there were some senior guys who were on the edge if there was any injuries. I know Dan Lawrence went across from ILT, but yeah, the guys who were on the edge. But some younger guys. I think the difficult thing with Lions tours is there's so much cricket going on at the moment, so players do have opportunity to play elsewhere. So probably that would change slightly if there wasn't all these franchise tournaments going on. I think, again, the exposure for the younger guys, as you said there, Rue and Mousley, younger players to those kind of conditions, I suppose it was a great tour. The disappointing thing a little bit, I suppose, is that India didn't expose to any big turning tracks. Seamers were the dominant part. So Potts was the standout player, 20-odd wickets. So seam bowling was actually the most effective in these things. So you're trying to expose guys and learn so that these guys, the Rue, the Mousleys, the young guys, that could be on an India tour in 3 years' time, 2 years' time, how are they going to do what Ollie Pope's just done? What are the options of defence and an attack to be able to win games for England in the subcontinent? That's the whole frame of that, and it's how to win in the subcontinent for these players and then get the experience. But we didn't quite get the red soil turning pitches that we wanted to expose them. So we had to sort of be a little bit thinking in training for the younger guys to really try and give them that kind of experience to go away with, that if they are, and we hope they are, on a full England tour, how can they replicate what Ollie Pope's just done 2 test matches ago?
And what about your coaching style and philosophy specific to batting? You played in a batting lineup that was arguably our finest batting lineup we ever had, in Cook, Strauss, Trott, Peterson, Bell, Collingwood, Pryor. Now that is a serious top 7, but it had players who played in different ways. Cook and Strauss would play different from Kevin Peterson, for example. Trott, and Bell, different players, different styles. When I spoke to the skipper, Stokes, a year or so ago, he said he wouldn't be going down the Cook route or the Atherton route. He wanted players who, Bazballed it. So have you had to change your style of coaching? Is there another way of doing things?
I think from my point of view with the bat, like I think you just said it, I think one of the experiences of playing against and with some top players, there's lots of different ways to be successful. So it's not my way of making that player play my way. It's being the best that they can be. And they've all got different strengths. And I think, as you said, but also the modern players coming through now have way more attacking options than maybe what that generation did as well. So you actually sometimes encourage them to understand how to, I know Brendan talks about soaking up pressure, how to defend, have confidence in your defence as much as your attacking options. So you do have to tweak that a little bit for the modern day player than maybe the generations I grew up with, which knew top of off, were comfortable leaving the ball in defence, but probably didn't have as many attacking options like the modern day player. So you do tweak it a little bit, but I'm massively on what's important for that individual. Zach Rory playing his way, Ollie playing his way, Joe Root sticking to what he does and playing his way. So I think that's the important thing for me, certainly with these young guys. And that's probably the balance for the younger guys in particular. They're on the edge. They listen to a lot of, baseball in the media and how to play. They want to play for England, so they're trying to play a certain way. But that message, just trying to be real clear about how they're going to do it, but their own way. So still being comfortable in defence and soaking up pressure, but then finding a way to be able to put pressure back on the bowler, but in their own way, not how other players do it. Trying to be comfortable in what they do, because that's only going to help under pressure. Sticking to your strengths, what you do, is a much better way.
I might just come back to Joe Root specifically in a minute, actually, in the context of his innings in the last test. But just another reflection on the Lions stuff. There are one or two of the young India batters who are in the main squad now. Patidar, I think, did he get 200s against the Lions, and Sarfaraz Khan, who's been brought into the squad as well. What were your impressions of the kind of the next generation of India players coming through? Maybe how they compare in terms of their development to the England players. And did you feel that they were the finished article, or the particular weaknesses that England can have a crack at?
Well, I certainly thought there's no doubt there were some really talented players, and there's no doubt when you play India A, I mean, the depth in quality is so big. And four of those players actually from the second test match where we went across, now they're in that India side. So actually for those guys there, actually to know that they were playing against some seriously good players who were on the edge of that India side. So that was great. I thought the things they did really well, technically, they just kept things very, very simple. The way they played spin, their footwork in particular, they didn't actually go to too many over high-risk options. They just played really well, comfortable in defence, as you would expect an Indian side, forward and back. Pick the right moment to take the right bowler on. If anything, in terms of exposure, was the seamers. Again, Potts was outstanding. His lengths, his nip, they looked more vulnerable when that ball was going sideways. After lunch and tea, if they were in and it was flat, then yeah, it was particularly hard. But there's no doubt there was some pure quality there with that. And the lads got to face it at Washington Sundar as well. So again, that kind of tall spinner who bowls at good pace. So that was something quite close to, I suppose, what the main team are facing there as well. So there was some real nice examples for the guys to take away. But one thing I would say with their batters, was the how simple they did keep it, and how, like I said, on those pitches we played on the sort of dark soil pitches, so it was slow turners, quite skiddy low, and they actually didn't really go too many cross-batted shots. They just used their feet, they went back and across. So it's great learning for when you go to India, when you're on a red soil pitch, a dark soil, how you can adapt your game and how quickly you have to be on and thinking. And the other thing I would say, probably over our guys, in that they were ruthless. When they got in, they went big. And some of our guys, and we know how difficult batting in India is, if you feel like you can be playing well and you go 60 and then suddenly you're on a day 3 or 4 pitch and it's hard and you actually haven't got the outcomes that you want, but you feel like you're playing well. One thing I would say from their batting lineup was when they were in, they buried us. And that's something, again, for our young lads to take away in that part of the world. When you get in, like Ollie did the other day, make it count and go as big as possible, because batting conditions can change so quickly and then it can be very hard again.
Come on then, give us a coach's perspective. Joe Root in the last game, it was absolutely fascinating, wasn't it? Because, I mean, England were a long way second favourites coming into that final day. But I had a sense that Rohit was a little bit worried from time to time in the morning when Zach Crawley was playing so well, and the pitch was pretty good still for a day 4 pitch in India. And then Joe Root came out and played what was for him quite a frenetic and skittish innings. And Brendan McCullum said after the match that he didn't have a problem particularly with the intent, because he felt Root was trying to push the field back and then he'd be able to knock it around. But obviously it didn't quite work out. And the conversation beyond that then was whether, Root is comfortable basballing, to put it like that, or whether he should just rein it back and play in the manner that everybody knows he can do because he's such a good player. How do you see that conversation?
My personal opinion is I want Joe Root just to be Joe Root. Like, he's the best player when he's on his game. He's the best player in the world. Like, one thing with Joe, and you only have to look at his strike rate anyway. When he plays normally, he scores at such a rate anyway. He does it differently to other players because he's the best at rotating strike. He's hard to, get dots on. So just be the best version of him. Like, you'd have him in any team in the world. So that would be mine. He doesn't need to necessarily. It's right to see him experiment, but for Joe, I just want him to be Joe Root. He's, like I said, he's the best we've ever had, really, when you look at some of his numbers and the way he plays, especially in that part of the world. But as you said, one thing I took, actually, obviously I did fly home, so I didn't actually see. I was on the aeroplane when I came back for that one. But there's no doubt the Indian side are worried about this England batting lineup. They know the dangers that they pose, which is fantastic. But also, I go back to Stokesy. I think watching Stokesy bat recently, certainly from Australia, when he took over as captain, I felt like he nearly went too hard too early. When he actually uses his all-round, because he's got such good technique anyway, when he gets in, he has that level to go that is so hard to shut down. But when he gets in, and I think that's the same with Joe, is still trusting that they are that good, that they can play their way. They don't need to try too hard to get dragged into other ways. And I think Joe Root at his best is exactly what England need really there, and he doesn't need to be any more than what he is, because he's, like I said, he's one of the best in the world.
And do you think that's the key? I was actually looking at your record in India, which I think you had 16 innings, and in 8 of them, I think you were out for a single-figure score. You got 100 in Nagpur on that 12-13 tour. I mean, that's the challenge, isn't it? Getting over that first 20 minutes, 30 minutes, particularly if the ball is spinning, depending on how much 100%. It is spinning and how quickly. But trusting your defence to get over those early moments in an innings.
I think you have to, don't you? And I think that's the hardest part of playing in the subcontinent is, your first 20 balls, as it is in anywhere in the world, but more importantly in India on a turning pitch, those first 20 balls are important, and real clarity on how you're going to attack and defend. Even watching Ollie Pope's innings the other day, there was so many great attacking, but there was so much good footwork in defence as well. So trying to get that balance between attack and defend, I think, is really important. And also knowing that it's amazing in that part of the world where things can look like they're happening really fast, but when you get a partnership started and someone gets it, then it just looks like everything's calm again. And then they lose a wicket, and then there's a bit of frantic kind of cricket again until you get settled. So yeah, it's the most important place to be so good on those first 20 balls, and how you actually train that in training as well. And you can practice that, I think, in terms of your footwork being crisp from ball one, because when you're facing Ashwin, Jadeja and Axar, I mean, that's as tough as it gets anywhere in the world. Ashwin's one of the best ever. So, it's the highest level of spin, isn't it? So from ball one, you have to be really good with your footwork. Otherwise, it's a tough place to go.
Final question before we let you go. How do you see it? I mean, it's 1-1, everything to play for, 3 games to come, Rajkot, Ranchi and Dharamshala. Do you fancy England's chances?
Yeah, again, there's no doubt. I think watching it, pre-series, listening to a lot of the Indian media from there, it was very confident it was going to be 5-0, 5-0. I think that's changed quite dramatically. I think there's no doubt this Indian team are worried about this England side, which is great. I think England have thrown some real punches here to push back. Again, it's going to come down to, someone like Ollie did in that first game. So someone's going to get a big 100. Then that's really important to really put yourself in the game. But they look threatening. I think the Indian batting lineup, as we know, has got an amazing amount of talent. But again, they'll be doubting them. They don't have necessarily the numbers of maybe some of the Indian batting lineups of before. So there's a few doubting themselves. Not that they haven't got the talent and ability, but you definitely feel there's a bit more pressure at the moment on India. But it's going to, let's hope so. But it's in the balance right now, but it'll be fascinating to see. But I think if someone can, in most of those tests, do what Ollie did there and get that big 100, we can put pressure on India, no doubt.
Well, he was a beautiful player, Nas Belly. The game is partly about aesthetics. One of the most pleasing players that you've seen.
Absolutely. Came in under my captaincy, actually, a long time, straight away. You asked him the question, do you know if someone's going to be good? You knew straight away Ian Bell was going to be a high class, an old school touch type player. Really had, one of the great cover drivers of the ball, but so much more than that. Talks a lot of sense. I think he'll make a good coach. I don't think he's old school, but I don't think just listening to him there, it is all Bazball. This is the way we're all going to go about it. I like the way he sort of said, I'm going to coach dependent on the individual that's in front of me. So good to catch up with Ian Bell, high class person and player. And I would have played 100 test matches, by the way, if you hadn't left me out in the Caribbean for 5 games in a row. You were bowled out for 46 in Trinidad and you still didn't pick me. So that I'm never forgiving you for that.
When you handed Ian Bell his first cap, I mean, famously, when you gave Rob Key his cap, you just said, "Here's your cap, well done, Kent." When you gave Harmison the cap, it was "Well done, Durham," and walked off. Was it "Well done, Warwickshire," and walk off?
I hope Rob Key has a good lawyer, because that piece in The Guardian came from Key's book, I think. I hope he has a good lawyer, because I did not hand him his cap. I think David Graveney gave him his cap. But no, I think that it's all changed. They give fools like me and you to give them their caps now. So, you're looking forward to Rajkot?
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's finish by having a bit of a preview of that game. So that game starts Thursday, third Test match at the ground. The news in the 9-day long break, England have obviously been in Abu Dhabi with their families, but Jack Leach won't join them in Rajkot because he's going home. He hasn't recovered from his injury. How much of a blow? It's a massive blow for him, but how much of a blow for England?
Yeah, it is a huge blow for him. The poor lad has just had so many issues, serious injuries, off-field health issues, coming back from a serious injury, has trimmed himself up, looks fit, then gets that injury in Hyderabad, has to go home. So you feel for Jack. Let's hope he's back playing for England. A blow, yeah, you want your senior spinner, especially if India suddenly press the panic button and prepare 2 real turning pitches. Well, maybe at Ranchi, Dharamshala might go through. So you want your senior spinner there. But England's 3 young spinners have done very well, and at times, statistically, have out-bowled their senior bowlers in the opposition, or spinners in the opposition. So, and Stokes has a lot of trust in those 3 young spinners. Are you surprised they didn't call someone up? Would you have called a spinner up just in case someone goes downhill on the morning of the game?
I might have done, yeah. If you think of the balance that England have had, they've had basically 1 seamer, 3 specialist spinners, and Joe Root. If they want to keep that same balance, as you say, they're more likely to do that in Rajkot and Ranchi than Dharamshala. But if they want to do that, and somebody falls down ill or gets injured, which can clearly happen on the eve of a test or the morning of a test, then they've nobody to come in. So I was a little bit surprised, but as you say, it suggests a lot of faith in the 3 young spinners, very, very inexperienced, and just 6 caps between them. Leach was by far the most senior spinner, but they have performed above expectations so far. So they've got a lot of faith in them. They're happy with what they've got. And I suspect what they may be thinking or have thought is that they might have a look at the balance of the side. I suspect, I don't know, we're not in Rajkot yet, haven't seen the pitch, but I wonder whether England might go to a second seamer or fast bowler and slightly change the balance of their side. That remains to be seen. The chat around India, Nas, first of all, Kohli, that was confirmed. India have named their squad for the last 3 test matches. No Virat Kohli, which remains a blow to the series, really, to miss such a great player like that. But they do have KL Rahul and Ravindra Jadeja back. Fitness pending. They had that little asterisk in the BCCI announcement to say that they've got to pass their fitness test. But if they come back, that's a big boost for India.
It is. And also rumours of Bumrah. There were rumours that he was going to be rested. How would you handle Bumrah, do you think? 3 test matches. They've had a 9-day gap and then it's back-to-back. Do you think they'll play him here in Rajkot and then rest him? I mean, Bumrah has had such an impact on the series. How would you handle Bumrah? All format player, playing a lot of cricket.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. There were a few rumours in the Indian media that he might not have been in the squad, that he might have been rested for Rajkot. They proved to be unfounded, but there's still a bit of the rumour mill that they're looking to rest him at some point in the series. Rajkot has a reputation of being one of the flatter pitches, doesn't it? Only had a couple of test matches, and I think there've been 9 individual hundreds scored in those 2 tests, quite high-scoring games. I think India got 650 against West Indies. It was a drawn match when England were there in 2017 with 3 England batters getting hundreds. So on that basis, you'd think, well, actually, that's when you want your crackerjack bowler who can open up a game if the conditions are flat. But then there's quite a quick turnaround to Ranchi, and then a gap in Dharamshala where you'd think you want probably your seamers to play there. It's a bit cooler up there. So I would have thought favourite is for him to play here and Dharamshala. And depending on how it goes here, then they may look to rest at Ranchi. I don't know.
And a bit of talk about the keeper situation as well, which I find surprising because Bharat's kept well. Is it the runs that they're concerned about?
I think he's kept really well. In fact, I think that's been one of the highlights of the two games. The keepers on both teams. Ben Foakes has obviously been outstanding for England, and Bharat, I think, has kept very well for India. But he hasn't got the runs. He did look a bit tentative in that second innings at Vishakhapatnam when India were kind of ahead of the game, and England had that brilliant third day, and India weren't really assertive, and Bharat was part of that passage of play either side of T where India just lost their way a little bit. But if you look at his principal game, his glove work has been outstanding. So there is a little bit of chat there. We shall see. So England are flying in Monday to Rajkot today. India will be up there, and it all starts again. Practice and training 2 days out tomorrow. So
injuries on both sides, and players coming back and leaving the tour. I hear there's an injury in the press corps as well. Have you gone in the calf? Is that right, or is it a night out with Ravi has done for you completely?
The red wine with Ravi might have done fine. I was going down the stairs this morning at the Trident, and I don't know whether it was cramp or I've gone in the calf, and it's an old man's injury, as you well know. I'm about to go and test it down the Marine Drive. So if there's anybody out there on the Marine Drive and they see a blur in blue going past them, that will be me testing out.
Tell us what a night out with Ravi. Ravi Shastri is just a legend of Indian cricket. What was a night out at Ravi's? What does it look like?
Well, it was lovely. His mother was there. He had a few old teammates there. Farooq, engineer, was there, who I know from Lancashire days. So it was very nice to see Farooq, who's obviously from Mumbai, but lives basically, he's like an adopted Lancastrian now. So it was great to see Farooq. And yeah, that's been my little stay in Mumbai done, really. So I'm off flying into Rajkot tomorrow, and so we will catch up on the far end of the test match, depending on how long that lasts. And let's hope for a test that lives up to the first two games in this series, which have been fantastic to watch.